I'm going to turn it over to Madonna.
Yes, thank you very much, Sandy, for kicking us off. And I am super excited to be actually speaking to Moyin. I think I would say I'm a fan. So I follow Moyin on Twitter and also on Instagram. I like how work. I like what you're doing for the community too. And I will just pass it over and say, please, Moyin, introduce yourself and tell us about your journey.
Thank you. Thanks for the warm intro. My name is Moyolua, but Moy for short. I'm a senior software engineer at Twitter, focused on Android development. I'm also a Google developer expert for Android.
So you did mention right now, actually, you're working for Twitter. That's pretty cool. So can you talk about your path to Google Developer Expert and why did you decide to apply?
Okay. Well, I studied computer science in university. And then after that, because I had already been doing a bit of programming in Android, I was able to get a job, my first Android developer job in 2015, straight out of college. And after that, I worked at another place called Zola Electric, and I worked with another GDE who was my manager, Anis Davis. And she was a GDE at the time. I wasn't, and I'm a huge copycat. So I think there are a lot of reasons, but to be honest, that was one of it because at the time being a GDE meant that you had access to more people in the community. You had access to Googlers, you had access to resources, and you're encouraged to give your talk or share your community work with a wide range of audience. And I wanted that. But before that, I skipped out a few parts. So I was a founder
Tell
for
us.
the first women techmakers community in Nigeria way back in 2013. It used to be called GDG Women there then, and it was supposed to be an arm of the Google developer group to encourage women to get into tech. So I did that while I was in school. And when the main organizer left, I stepped up to become an organizer. And that when I left college and moved to Lagos, still in Nigeria, I became a lead, a co-organizer for the Google developer group in Lagos. Initially, when I started the community work, I did not have enough technical knowledge to give
Mhm.
back. Although I was doing lots of organization and stuff like that, but I wasn't contributing technically because I literally had nothing to contribute. But what I found was that
Mhm.
the people, so it was a community of students. They were young, they were hungry, they were eager to give back. They
Mhm.
had a bit of resources from Google to support that. And they were very free with sharing everything they knew. They shared all their knowledge for free. They organized free events. That was where I learned how to build Android apps. And I just sort of had it in mind that like maybe one day in the future when I know enough to give back, I would start because it just seemed really cool that, these people are giving out all this information for free and literally changing lives.
I mean, right now
Uh,
you know a lot and you're giving back, right?
Yeah. So when I moved to Lagos, I think in 2015, I took the Udacity Nano degree. There I learned how to build Android watches. I think I wrote a bunch of articles or created some
Mhm.
open source code. And then there was the Firebase ML library. I forget what it's called, the Mobile Vision API, way back
Mhm.
in 2016. That was very interesting to me because I knew nothing about ML, but it was just fascinating to use the library to build interesting stuff. So I wrote a lot of articles about that. That got featured in Android Weekly. And that was how I started building my technical contributions. And then one thing people don't know is I applied twice to become a GDE. I applied in 2017 and didn't make it past the first interview.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, I just thought like if you're really a GDE, then you should actually love contributing, and it shouldn't like if it's meant for you, you would eventually get it. So I knew that even though I did not get the title, I still loved giving back and contributing and giving talks. Actually, like the process of taking a very complicated subject matter and then learning it and then breaking it down for people. I found that I enjoyed doing that, so I just continued doing what I was doing. And in 2019, I got
Mhm.
into the GDE apprenticeship program. I think it's now called Road to GDE.
Yes.
I was mentored by Rebecca Franks, who is now a Googler, for
Yeah.
3 months. And then after that, I applied again and got in. gotten in 2019.
Cool. I mean, that's amazing. So I think you've spoken so passionate about the community. And to me, I just want to ask you, why is the community important to you, especially? And what are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, right from when I was learning how to code, I learned how to code. So the first app I built was actually a J2ME app with
Mhm.
Java and NetBeans. If you are old
Yes.
enough to have used NetBeans to code,
And Eclipse too.
yeah, all that. And like I said, I'm a huge copycat. I saw that my friends built this app, and I was just so fascinated by seeing something work on the phone, and I got them to teach me how to do it. And they did it for free. Like, we're all students, we had to pass exams and go to classes, but they still took time out to teach me these things. And I've been a part of the community since day one, and even though like they poured into me when I did not know anything, free classes, free, even I think at the time where we were just having a Google branded shirt or something to be proud of.
That's cool.
Uh, yeah, so it was just a young, hungry, eager bunch of people to work with, and they were very excited to teach you for free. So I've always known that, like, as soon as I know a bit, I would want to be in a position to teach other people too. And then when I started this, we did not really have lots of women speakers. So even though I was the head of women technicals, I used to have to go get speakers who are guys to come speak to the women. So it just didn't feel right. And I just, sort of thought that like one day, instead of organizing, I would also like to speak at this kind of event. So I've always, wanted to give back, even though I did not, or even though I thought I did not know enough at the time.
Wow, thank you very much for contributing to the community and for being part of the community. I do have another question for you, Moyen. So you've worked
Okay.
at both the tech startup and a big tech company right now, right? How has that worked at all these different companies helped you grow as a developer?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about that, and I feel
Mhm.
like I was in the right, like I worked at the right companies at the right time, like
Yes.
with the sizes, because
Mhm.
I'll focus more on the company I was before Twitter. That was a startup. We're just two Android developers in the entire company, and we're serving users of like we had over 10,000 downloads on the app. But it meant what that meant was that two developers is like you are the entire team. You are the notifications team, you are the database team, you are the network team, you are the release team, because who else is going to do it? If there's something
No
wrong,
one.
you're the person who has to roll back the app. And, so it just sort of gave me a good overview of what it meant to build an Android app from beginning to the end and being in charge of all these different things. Because, of course, there was no one else to do it. Like, you couldn't assign someone else to build your UI while you focused on the network request. Like, you had to do everything. And I think it was a good learning experience for me coming up, because it just sort of gave me a good overview of building a complete Android app end to end, and understanding how all the parts fit together. I think things are a bit different from Twitter is the biggest company I've ever been at, but from what I've seen and read, I think things are kind of like the same, where you have different teams handling different things, and you don't actually get to work on like a complete app. You're just responsible for a section of it. And I feel like having the experience of touching everything at the previous company kind of helped me understand, like, even though
Mhm.
I'm on a separate team that just works on a tiny portion, I still have the big mental picture of how it all fits together. And sometimes that kind of helps you with like debugging or knowing the right questions to ask,
Mhm.
knowing where to look for stuff, yeah. So I think that's the major difference between between a startup and a very big company.
Actually, that's a very good point because that's what I've done. I think I've worked for startups so far in my life because I've always been scared of joining big companies, and also, we have to do all the lead code and stuff. But other than that, that's a very good concept because you get to work on the entire Android system where you're a notification person, you're the DB person, you're either looking into this other part that when you're working as compared
Yeah.
to when you're working to the big company, you're just set specifically to work either on the design system or, some other parts of the app.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Cool. Now, I just want to say again, congrats. I saw your tweet on you being promoted. Woohoo.
Thank
So,
you.
on your recent promotion, right? How did you set yourself up for success? Please share with your audience how people can work towards those promotions, and how did it differ from your other company, the startup that you mentioned?
Okay. First of all, thank you.
Sure.
Um, I guess I think the process is a bit similar in companies of the same sizes. So first of all, you have to, like Anu mentioned earlier, self-advocacy. It's usually a case where you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to get promoted. I know it's strange, but that's probably how it works. And then you talk to your manager about it, and then sometimes they might agree with you and they'll say, yeah, put together a document, but sometimes they might say like, no, I think you need to work on certain things. And I guess however the reply comes,
Mhm.
you can work with them. So I remember having a promo conversation probably 6 months before I got it, or even longer than that. And what I did next was that I was lucky that at that point I was about to set my goals. We have ladders at Twitter, and what I did was I looked at the ladder for the next level and was like, picked out the things I thought I was not doing well and made those my goals for the next 6 months. Because usually to get promoted, you have to have been acting for at that level for a bit. I think that number varies by companies. Um,
Okay.
so I picked out a bunch of stuff that I thought wasn't doing well. I set my goals, showed it to my manager, and we agreed that it was a good path. Something else that happens when you share your goals, your promo goals with your manager, is that if you're not meeting the standard, let's say to become senior, you have to have led a number of projects, for example, and you've not led enough. Maybe in that time, they would, if an opportunity comes in on the team and it's like there's a project to be led, they just sort of remember, hey, Muni needs to get promoted, she needs to lead the project, let's assign this to her to help her hit her goals. And then you just sort of work on that, and then like when you're ready, you get feedback from your colleagues, get feedback from people. And then there's this thing that happens in big companies that did not happen at the startup I was, and it's called, putting together a promotion packet, where you basically have to write about how amazing you've been in the current level you are, and building a case for why you should get promoted.
Nice.
And sometimes the manager writes it, sometimes you write it, sometimes the manager reaches out to you to ask for points. Because depending on how many people they manage, they might not have enough visibility into what you do every day, which is why it is important to keep a brag document. So it's just a document with everything you've done. Because sometimes you might forget, like if you join a company and you're trying to get promoted 3 years later, you might forget everything you did in the first year. But if you have a document and a good track record of everything you've been doing, then it's easy enough to just refer to that document, or even share that document with your manager to let them know what you've been doing and let them see for themselves like why you deserve to get promoted. And then when you do that, when the promo packet is complete, then it gets submitted, and then fingers crossed for a good answer. But at my other company, at the startup I worked, I remember having a discussion with my manager too. But what we did then was interesting. We did like a self-eval kind of thing where we had
Oh
a
yeah.
bunch of things that there was no formal ladder, but she had a bunch of things that she thought a senior engineer should be. And then I rated myself against those things, and then she rated me against those things. And in some places there was obvious discrepancy. Like,
Discrepancies.
like let's say I rated myself a 5, and then she put a 1, and it's like, okay, looks
Oh
like we're
no.
not aligned here. How can we? So how can we? Other sometimes it might think like, oh, why doesn't this person think I'm as amazing as I think I am?
Yeah.
But I think it's just good for alignment,
Mhm.
and you can work together to, bring yourself up to the level that they want you to be. And
Nice.
I think after that, I think she just had a conversation with a manager. I'm not sure how it went, but I just know that I got the news that I was promoted. I did not have
Good.
to put together a promo packet, but we're just two Android developers, and she was my manager, so it was a lot easier.
Oh, nice. Actually, you spoke about the document that you have, and I do have a follow-up on that document. So do you put all the collaboration you do, sprint work? What exactly do you put in this document? Maybe somebody might be listening today and they might start documenting their stuff. So what exactly do you put on your document on that document?
I think it varies from, I think it's personal. It varies. Some people have a very like organized brag document they can share with people. For me, I just post. It's like my dump of stuff that I do so that I don't forget. But I guess ideally you would want to make it a document that you can share with people to let them see all the work you've been doing. One thing I forgot to mention is in companies, I guess maybe I don't know about startups, but like big companies care a lot about impact. So it's not enough to work on stuff. You also have to show the impact. So I guess after every project or everything you've done, you also have to remember to highlight the impact. So ideally, a brag document would be a document with the projects and the impacts of the stuff that you've done. But
Nice.
for me, I use it as a document to just as a reference document. Like if I work on a project, I might post the project, I might put a bit of details about it. Mine is not really like it's not fully fleshed, but if I need to, like, I created my promo packet out of that. Like if I
Nice.
need references or I need links to conversations I had or links to tickets or stuff, I know that everything I need is there. And there's no chance of me forgetting what I worked on because it's all listed there. Um,
Perfect.
yeah, I see a link in the comment. I think, yeah, I was thinking about that link, the one with the brag documents. I think it's a really good resource to look at.
Amazing. Nice. Thank you very much, Moin, for sharing. And we're not done with you yet. So I have more questions for you. You thought we were done? No, we're not. We're just getting started. Okay. From Nigeria to London, right? How has that
Yeah.
transition been for you?
That is a good question. Well, some parts of it were very, I moved in interesting circumstances. But the last startup I used to work remotely. So I started working remotely in 2017 before it became a thing in 2020. And I kind of loved it because I just like, doing my work in the ideal coder in the dark room. Just kidding. But yeah, I got used to working remotely. I understood things about communication on Slack, being visible or even more visible when people can't see you in person. So I kind of got used to it because when I moved to London, I had to work remotely because the offices were closed by then. So I moved to London 2 days before the first lockdown. So it was like straight into lockdown for 3 months. But I kind of already had the remote work culture built because I had been doing that for 3 years before moving. But I had never been to London. But I had been to New York for DrayCon New York, where I gave 2 talks in 2017. And I think New York and London they kind of have the same vibe. It's lots of people, at least when there are no lockdowns,
Yeah.
it's busy. There's lots of stuff to do. There's like the metro and the underground. So it was kind of easy to map my knowledge from one city to another and sort of make it through the first couple of months.
Nice. Pretty cool. How come? If you could tell us something to your younger self, what would that be?
Um, I guess that would be to not worry too much and just keep at it
Yeah.
because it's easy for me to get like very worked up about the future, like what's it gonna hold, what's gonna happen.
Is it
Yeah.
that all of us though?
Yeah, but like I'm an overthinker. I
Yeah.
think about things too much and it
Mhm.
can get to it. Sometimes it actually gets too much. But
Mhm.
I feel like right now I've built up a certain, I kind of have understood how I work and the systems and understood that like I'm not sure what tomorrow holds, but if I
Mhm.
keep this up, like if I keep showing up, if I keep giving my best, if I keep learning new stuff, it doesn't matter where it goes because things sort of align around this
Yeah.
these sort of values and things to turn out okay. And yeah, I guess I'll tell my previous self that I turned out amazing.
I love that. And I think that's true. I mean, I think actually the first time I saw you it was through a tweet. And I think it's a tweet that you did that went famous and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then I remember that's the time I think I followed you on Twitter. So yeah, keep up the good job. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
And almost to my last question now, because I see we have 10 minutes so that we can give
Okay.
time for like some questions at the end. So would you propose having a mentor early in your career? And do you have one?
That is a good question. I find the concept of mentoring very interesting. I know that, so I've had different people reach out to me to mentor them, and personally, I kind of prefer like a short fixed term arrangement where if I'm working with someone for like say 3 months, we have goals. Like we know what we want to get out of that mentorship program. We have goals. We have a set schedule of when we're meeting, and we can follow up like bi-weekly or weekly and check in until we hit those goals after the certain period. I know that some people prefer just like extended mentorship where they just latch. No, latch is not the right word. Like they just want to be attached to you, and I guess it works for some people, but I kind of feel like with that sometimes it might be more difficult to, if there are no clear goals, it might be more difficult to know what to hit and if you are making progress. But I guess I have lots of people who are my mentors who don't know it, because sometimes I think you might not necessarily need to, I might be wrong, or you might not necessarily need to be in contact with someone for you to learn from them. So if you read people's books, if you read their tweets, if you know what the videos they watch, if they recommend books and you watch it, I guess they are sort of indirectly mentoring you. And I do that a lot, so that you're learning from people even though you might not actually have access to them. But this is not a one size fits all answer. I think it works differently for different people. But I found that like even with the Google mentorship programs I've been in, the Women Developers Academy, the Road to GDE, it's always a specific amount of time, either 1 month, 3 months. There's clear set of goals, and everyone knows what they want to achieve from it at the end. But I guess it works differently for different people.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. I feel like that's very true. And I think to me, what I have is more like I prefer kind of like friendship where I can reach out from time to time. So I don't know if that's called mentorship too, but I looked at it as also mentorship because I can ask like questions. But yeah, that's a
Yeah.
pretty good answer. And before we open it up for questions, I just want to move away from the tech and just go into your personal life a little bit and ask you a question. I follow you a lot. I actually saw you on a billboard. No, I was not in London to see it, but I saw the post on Twitter and I was like, wow, I know Moyin. That's pretty cool. So you're a marathoner, right? Tell us more.
Yes, I am.
Tell us more, please.
I
And how
started
can we
running.
and also how can we participate? So what I've been doing is we have this big park around our area that I've been going with my boys as they ride their bike, and then I'm trying to run. So I'm doing like 10K, like 10,000 steps every day, walking to like a half marathon. So please tell us more.
Well, I started running in 2015 because I just started at my new job, and I just wanted a way to move because I knew I was going to be sitting all day. I hated it initially. I was very slow, but I guess I just applied the mindset of like showing up every day, and it was, apart from running, it was a great way for me to meet people outside of my tech circles, because people in the running group, I had a running group, and people in that group were like bankers and lawyers. Nobody was in tech. And I guess I would not have made other friends who were outside of my circle without joining that group. And it sort of got easier over time. So what you're doing with running is you're working out, exercising your body. You're also working on your mental health with or without knowing it, because sometimes after I run, you just feel very happy and you can't explain why. And I was in the group with people who had run marathons, and like I said before, I'm a huge copycat. So I was like, okay, I want to do that too. And I signed up for the first one. It took me almost 7 hours to complete it, but I completed it. And I think there's this high when you just finish your run and you're like, even though it felt like you're going to die, it's like, when can I do the next one? And you sign up immediately. Um, but there's also the thing where you have
Mhm.
to like build up to it. Yeah, if you go
Mhm.
out and just decide you're going to run a half marathon, you might get yourself injured. So having a plan, being consistent, sticking to your schedule, eating well, sleeping well, and gradually I got to improve. Um, and since then, I've done 8 marathons. And for one of the marathons, I actually got a Guinness World Record because it was the first virtual London marathon, and over 30 something thousand runners ran it virtually. Yeah, that was enough to get me a Guinness World Record.
You did. Wow, look at that.
Yeah,
That's
no,
amazing.
I think it was just like I was one of the 30 something thousand people who ran
Yeah,
the largest virtual marathon. Um,
good job.
thank you.
Wow. I
But
mean, I'm impressed.
thank you. I guess the way running and tech is similar is that it's the
Mhm.
community, which is one
Yeah.
thing I found very interesting because you have this amazing set of people who might have gone ahead of you, people who have had the injuries you've had, or just
Mhm.
people who like want to run and then make friends after. And I found that both the tech and running communities have a lot in common, and that's probably why I'm still running today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Moin. It was amazing hearing from you, sharing your knowledge with the community, learning from you. And I don't know if you plan on joining a cooking team because I want to join that too, like be a copycat.
Thank you.
Sandy.
Yeah, well, we do have a couple questions here that we could address in our last couple minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah.
The first question: how do you keep track of the brag document? I think I need a lot of hours just to write what I do in a day or a week. And how do you show evidence of things like leadership or influence?
Okay. For me, anything that feels like work outside of work is probably not going to get done. So I guess finding the best way to not make it feel like work, which is why I said my own document is very unstructured. Like every month or maybe once in 2 months, I have a note actually in the notes app where I just put links and links to Slack conversations, links to Jira tickets. One thing I also do, which I don't know if other people do this, is once I start a project, I create a bookmark on Google Chrome, and then everything goes in that bookmark. The Epic, links to design documents, links to Figma, links to Slack, everything goes in that bookmark. So sometimes, like all I need is just to go to that bookmark and visit and see. And then if I feel like there's something I need to remember in the future, I just post the link in the notes app. And then when I'm ready, maybe after a month, I transfer everything into the Bragg document. So I guess the thing is doing it daily, no, not daily, but when you think something is important and you might need in the future, just finding a way to save it somewhere as a future reference. And then when you actually have time, you can set up time to work on the documents. I know that at Twitter, some group of women have a calendar invite bi-weekly or something where they meet for like 30 minutes to work on the documents together. So just make it in a way that's not stressful for you. If not, if you're like me, it's not going to get done.
Oh, that's a good point. It'll be a little bit different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Depending on your personal flow. Let's see if we can get one more question in real quick. What does growth look like at a big company compared to at a startup? That's a tough one.
That is a good question. Well, I've only been at one startup and one big company, so the mileage might vary. Um, I think from what I've seen, there's a lot of focus on impact at the bigger companies,
Yeah.
and that might mean different things to you. So sometimes maybe you had to work on something that was like 2 lines of code, and then the impact is reaching, there's a high impact reaching potential millions of users. In the developer's eyes, that might not count for much because it was just 2 lines of code. But to the business, it meant a lot. Like it meant a lot for the metrics and stuff. So I think understanding the business in both a startup and a big company, and then understanding how best you can use your skills to align and help either of those companies achieve their goals. I found that in the startup, it's just sometimes we come up with ideas for projects together. Sometimes it's like the product manager, but in other companies, it might be like different people might be responsible for it. But it usually involves a lot more people and has to tie into probably the company's OKR. So I guess understanding the business and understanding how you can use your skills within your team to align with those goals. And that's probably what will be counted as growth for you.
Yes, that's great. That's great advice. Well, we're right up against time. So I just want to thank you both. Thank you to Madonna. Thank you to Moyen. And Anu, if you're still on, thank you all. It was wonderful to listen to you all. You gave such great advice to us today. So thanks for everything you do.